Hi everyone, welcome back to Radio Night Crime. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. If you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's relax and jump into tonight's case. Story 1. Born into one of America's wealthiest families, inheriting millions of dollars, this man was suspected of being the perpetrator in several mysterious, unsolved cases over the years. Somehow he always managed to escape justice spectacularly. His life is full of mystery and legend, and the deeper you look, the more terrifying it becomes. That man is Robert Durst. In the U.S., the Durst family is incredibly famous, especially Robert Durst. Born in 1943, he was a prominent figure in New York's real estate industry and the eldest son of the Seymour Durst. The Durst family owns one of the largest real estate empires in Manhattan, New York. Their fame in America rivals that of the Trump family. In the expensive Manhattan area of New York, over 10 skyscrapers belong to the Durst family, showcasing their immense and enduring wealth. As the eldest son of the magnate Seymour Durst, Robert inherited millions of dollars, so he never had to worry about money. With a good education, a career, and a happy marriage, it seemed Robert had everything most people dream of. The question is, how was such a person involved in these mysterious cases, and how did he manage to evade the law? First, let's turn back time to September 30th, 2001. While fishing on the coast of Galveston, Texas, a father and son unexpectedly spotted several black garbage bags drifting ashore. Driven by curiosity, they decided to open one to see what was inside. To their horror, they found an arm, which scared them so much they threw it back and ran. After reaching the shore, they immediately called the police. Upon receiving the emergency call, Texas police quickly dispatched personnel to the scene. There they found the remains of a male victim who was no longer intact. The missing parts were later found in the water nearby, inside black bags. Only the head was missing, eluding the investigators. The police continued searching for clues from the garbage bags. Fortunately, they discovered a newspaper in one bag with a clear address written on it. Although it had been soaked for quite some time, the writing was still legible. This address was right in Galveston, not far from where the victim had been found. Therefore, the police went to 2213 Avenue K, Galveston, and learned it was a 1-year-old man named Morris Black. Apartment 2 was rented by a deaf old woman named Dorothy Sinner. Through fingerprint analysis, the police confirmed that the victim found on the beach was indeed Black, from Apartment 1. Thus, the deaf old woman in Apartment 2, outside Apartment 2, the police found bloodstains on the steps, leading them to apply for a search warrant from the court. Upon entering Apartment 2, they found the interior was simple, almost as if no one was living there. The apartment looked clean at first glance, but the kitchen floor was covered with a cloth, hiding numerous cuts and bloodstains underneath. At that point, the investigators confirmed that the blood indeed belonged to Morris Black from Apartment 1. It seemed that this was where the killer had committed the act. The key link in solving the case was found in the trash. It was a receipt from a hardware store listing items purchased, a fruit knife, cloth, and a saw. Notably, there was also an ophthalmologist's appointment slip with the name Robert Durst on it. On October 9th, the police received a call that the suspect had come to collect his glasses, and surprisingly, it was indeed Robert Durst. They found a saw in Durst's car trunk, which further increased suspicion that he was the perpetrator. After investigation, the police discovered that the deaf old woman was Robert Durst in disguise. Durst had used the name of a high school friend for this alias. He was then arrested and charged with the murder of Morris Black. But then, Durst was released on bail for $300,000, a high amount but nothing compared to a millionaire's fortune. Durst's wife, Deborah Cheriton, bailed him out, allowing him freedom while awaiting trial on October 16th. Very soon after, news of the case involving Robert Durst was uncovered and published by a New York newspaper. On Durst's part, although he promised to return to court for the trial, he did not show up. Investigators followed Durst's trail and found him before another murder could occur. Not long after, Durst was apprehended by a supermarket security guard for stealing a sandwich. When the police arrived at the store to arrest Durst, they found about $38,000 in his car. With such a large amount of money, one might wonder why he would steal a sandwich, which baffled many. Besides the cash, the police also discovered 2 guns and Morris Black's driver's license in the car. These were seen as critical evidence proving Robert Durst was a suspect in this murder. But this was not the first time Robert Durst became infamous across America for a criminal case. 20 years prior, Durst was suspected in connection with the disappearance of his first wife, Kathleen McCormick. Kathleen married Durst when she was very young, captivated by Durst's peculiar charm, while she was a recent graduate aspiring to become a pediatrician. After marriage, Kathleen gave up her dreams as well as late-night parties with friends, which was one of the reasons for marital conflicts. The Dursts owned 3 apartments in New York, 1 in Manhattan, and 1 in Westchester Town, South Salem. So when disagreements arose, they often moved to live separately for a while. At that time, Kathleen was preoccupied with her demanding studies, but Durst felt very clearly that his wife was out of his control. On Sunday, January 31st, 1982, Kathleen drove to her friend Gilbert Najami's house for a party. Kathleen arrived alone while Durst was at their South Salem apartment. After Kathleen arrived, Durst called and looked for her. After receiving her husband's call, Kathleen told Najami she had to leave because her husband had something to discuss. But she also warned Najami, saying, "If anything happens to me, pay attention. What Robert is planning really frightens me." However, at that moment, Gilbert didn't pay much attention to this, and she had no idea what was going on to comfort Kathleen. Yet Gilbert couldn't imagine that would be the last time she saw Kathleen. She just vanished from the world. For days after the party at Gilbert Najami's house, Durst went to the Manhattan police station to report his wife missing. He told the police that around 3 or 4 p.m. the previous Sunday, Kathleen left their South Salem home to attend a party at her friend Gilbert's. At 7:30 p.m., Kathleen drove back home, slightly tipsy but not drunk. After that, they argued over some issues. During the argument, Kathleen insisted on living alone and wanted to return to their New York apartment. Durst stated he told her if she wanted to go back, she could, but she wasn't allowed to drive herself. Therefore, Kathleen conceded and decided to take the train at 9:17 p.m. back to New York. Around 8:30 p.m., Durst drove Kathleen to the train station. After seeing her off, Durst returned home. Back at home, Durst chatted and drank with a neighbor. Later, he went for a solitary walk to clear his mind. Durst told the police that around 11:15 p.m. that night, he used a payphone to call their Manhattan apartment to ensure Kathleen had arrived. Kathleen indeed answered, saying she was watching TV. Security personnel also confirmed that Kathleen entered the building and went to their 15th floor apartment that night. A few days later, Albert Einstein College of Medicine, where Kathleen was studying, called to report she had missed several days of classes. Durst claimed this was when he realized his wife was missing. After hearing Durst's statement, the police treated it as a typical disappearance case, where a spouse, upset due to marital conflict, had left home. They had seen cases like this far too often. They believed perhaps after a few days, Kathleen would return home. Therefore, the police did not continue to follow up or handle the case. Then, the New York Post reported that Durst was offering $100,000 for any information leading to his wife's whereabouts. In response, Kathleen's friends reacted strongly, believing Durst's actions were insincere, and that he was certainly behind Kathleen's disappearance. Kathleen's close friend, Gilbert, vividly remembered what Kathleen had said the night before she left. All police efforts to find her were unsuccessful, with no leads uncovered. Seeing the police's irresponsible attitude, Gilbert felt she couldn't trust them. Thus, she rallied some friends to go to Kathleen's apartment. There, they found several garbage bags outside the door and took them all back to Gilbert's house. During their search, they discovered Kathleen's clothes, books, study materials, cosmetics, diaries, and various other items in the bags. It seemed Durst knew Kathleen would never return. Around that time, quite a few files with clues were stolen, and the homes of Najami and Kathy Trassman, 2 of Kathleen's friends, were broken into and searched. After that, it seemed only Gilbert Najami continued to search for Kathleen Durst, and she was certain Durst knew she was watching him. On the other hand, Robert Durst continued his life as usual, dating new women, traveling around the world, gambling, and enjoying himself. Durst had claimed that night he drove Kathleen to the train station, but no one could confirm this. At that time, all of New York suspected Durst was involved in Kathleen's disappearance. However, due to lack of evidence, the police couldn't charge him. 20 years after the incident, the case was reopened when New York police arrested a man named Martin. Martin told the police he knew about the disappearance of Robert Durst's millionaire wife in 1982. Kathleen had actually been killed by Durst at their lakeside mansion in South Salem. When the police arrived at the mansion, they learned it had been sold to someone else. Remarkably, this was the first time police had checked out the mansion in relation to Kathleen's disappearance. The police from 20 years ago had never investigated there. After a thorough search, they discovered a secret door behind a wardrobe. This secret door led to a hidden space. The current homeowner was shocked. He had no idea such a place existed in his house. The police thought this would be a perfect place to hide a body. They then conducted a comprehensive search of the mansion and the surrounding lake area, but found nothing. The police investigation revealed that the security guard's report at the Manhattan apartment, stating Kathleen had returned that night, was provided by the Durst Family Corporation. Whether Kathleen actually returned to the Manhattan apartment that night remains an open question. In the days before Kathleen disappeared that year, she had hired a lawyer to propose a divorce to Durst, including property division. Just 3 days later, Kathleen vanished. Was this really just a coincidence? At the time, the police not only failed to search Kathleen's home, but also didn't check Durst's car. Durst had walked to the police station to report her missing instead of driving. What secrets might have been in the trunk of his car? Current police efforts led them to Kathleen's close friends. They all mentioned that Durst had a close friend named Susan Berman, who had known him since college, suggesting she might know some of his secrets. Susan, however, no longer lived in New York, but in Los Angeles, California. As the police prepared to head to Los Angeles to investigate Susan, an unexpected event occurred. On December 24, 2000, the Los Angeles Police Department received an unexpected call. The caller said his neighbor's door was open, but there was no response when he called out, hoping the police could come quickly. Surprisingly, that address was where Susan, Robert Durst's longtime close friend, lived. Not long after receiving the report, the Beverly Hills Police Department in Los Angeles dispatched officers to the scene. Upon arrival, they found Susan lying unconscious in a pool of blood with a bullet in the back of her neck. The medical examiner confirmed she was deceased. Items at the scene were untouched, showing no signs of theft or struggle. Therefore, the police speculated that she probably knew her killer, being shot while her back was turned. Since Robert was her closest friend, the police began focusing their search on him. A few days after the incident, the Beverly Hills Police Department unexpectedly received an anonymous letter. On the envelope, only the recipient's address was written as Beverly Hills Police, with Beverly misspelled as Beverly. The correct ending should have been lie, not lay. Surprisingly, through the postmark, it was determined that the letter was sent the day before Susan's body was discovered. Thus, the police deduced that this letter might have been sent by the killer himself. Clearly, the writer wanted the police to quickly find Susan's body in her home. Why would he do that? At the time of the murder, Durst was in California. Before the incident, Susan had been struggling financially, owing several months of rent, and even resorting to loans to get by. Then suddenly, Susan received a large sum of money from Durst. Some speculated that Susan might have known the secret about Durst's murder of Kathleen back then, threatening to go to the police if he didn't pay up. Faced with blackmail from his close friend, Durst might have decided to eliminate Susan to keep her quiet, ensuring no one else in the world would know the truth about Kathleen's disappearance. Due to lack of evidence, the police couldn't identify Susan's killer, leaving this case unsolved. However, the media quickly sniffed out this hot story. They soon produced reports on Kathleen's disappearance and Susan's murder. This made Durst feel irritated and annoyed. After that, Durst went to Galveston, Texas, disguised as a mute old woman, and rented a house. Then, the gruesome incident occurred as mentioned at the beginning of the video. At that time, Durst was not only facing an investigation into Kathleen's old disappearance case, but also accused of being a suspect in Morris Black's murder. Durst spent $1.8 million to hire two renowned lawyers to defend him. In January 2002, Robert Durst faced Judge Susan Criss in Galveston County Court, Texas, for the murder of Morris Black. In court, Robert did not deny dismembering Morris, but claimed it was all in self-defense. According to him, Morris had taken Robert's gun to threaten him, and during the struggle, a shot accidentally hit the victim in the head. At that moment, being too scared, Durst didn't dare call the police. Given his involvement in two previous cases, if he had reported it, probably no one would have believed his account. Therefore, Durst decided to dispose of the body at sea. His lawyers argued sharply and emotionally that despite being born into a wealthy family, at the age of 7, Durst witnessed his mother commit suicide by jumping off the roof, which severely impacted his psychology, leading to Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism spectrum disorder. People with this condition are known for their diminished social interaction and communication skills. Durst's lawyers argued that in his panic, he dismembered the body without any emotion. With this argument, the jury set aside the prosecution's main contention that Robert Durst killed not in self-defense. Despite fierce public criticism under the excellent defense by his two lawyers, the jury had to acquit Robert Durst because the prosecution could not prove he intentionally killed his neighbor. The millionaire admitted he had violated laws, as well as erased evidence by dismembering the victim, and posted bail. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but was released early in 2005. The story of Durst's life became fodder for New York tabloids, ever since his wife vanished without a trace in 1982. In 2010, filmmaker Andrew Uretsky released the film All Good Things, based on Robert's life, depicting Kathleen's disappearance and Susan's murder. After the movie hit theaters, Robert Durst once again became the center of attention. He himself had watched the film. Following his lawyer's advice, Robert contacted Andrew, proposing a long interview. This interview later became the documentary series The Jinx, The Life and Deaths of Robert Durst, broadcast on HBO. At this point, Durst wanted Uretsky to make a documentary about him. He wanted to tell his own story, what had happened, and the backstory. Uretsky was very interested in this story. He understood Durst well and always sought the truth. Was Durst really a murderer? Therefore, director Andrew Uretsky promised to make a documentary about millionaire Robert Durst. The film was then funded by HBO and quickly began filming. During the production of the documentary, the team re-examined the evidence and statements from those years, with the director posing questions that the public had long suspected through interviews for Durst to answer himself. He responded to the questions carefully and logically, seemingly without any contradictions. Robert Durst had lost a family inheritance battle, after which he was shunned by everyone. His brother had hired a bodyguard to watch him. This made the production team sympathize with Durst. Gradually, they felt this millionaire was truly innocent. At the end of 2010, while filming for The Jinx, Robert denied all accusations in the deaths of Kathleen and Susan. Sometime after this initial interview, the production team discovered an astonishing detail. While sorting through Susan's estate, they found a letter Durst had sent to Susan in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, that year. When seeing the envelope, the production team felt haunted. They noticed the spelling errors and recalled the anonymous letter sent to the Beverly Hills police. They immediately compared the two letters and found not only the same spelling mistakes, but also similar handwriting. After spotting this clue, the production team held an internal meeting. In that meeting, they decided to uncover the truth. To uphold justice, the team continued seeking evidence to hand over to the police, determined to bring the perpetrator to justice. So, they decided to approach Durst again, planning a series of interview questions aimed at the handwriting on these letters to prevent him from further deceiving. After much effort from the film crew in 2012, Andrew interviewed Robert for the second time, confronting him with the newly found envelope. When presented with this latest evidence, Durst showed signs of stress, his hands trembling slightly. Ultimately, Durst only admitted to writing letters to Susan, but not the anonymous one to the police. As for why both letters had the same spelling errors and similar handwriting, the millionaire could not explain. After turning off the cameras, Durst's microphone was still on. During a break, alone in the bathroom, he muttered to himself without realizing the microphone was still live. Durst said, "What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course." After the documentary aired, it sent shockwaves around the globe. The production team handed over their new findings and evidence to the police. Subsequently, millionaire Robert Durst was arrested in New Orleans, suspected of being the murderer in Susan Behrman's case. The trial was scheduled for March 2, 2020, but due to the impact of the global health crisis on legal proceedings, the trial was postponed. Will Robert Durst manage to escape justice this time? We'll have to wait and see. What do you think about the story of Robert Durst, the devil in the guise of an American millionaire? Story 2. This disappearance case is quite different from the stories we've covered before. A man vanished so long ago that he was nearly forgotten by everyone. However, the surprising thing is that after 23 years, he was found without any incident. The main character of the story is Richard Hoagland, who worked as a salesman for an insurance company. In 1982, Hoagland met Linda Easler, and after getting to know each other, they progressed to marriage. The story unfolds in Indiana, a state in the Midwest of the United States, with its capital, Indianapolis, which is also the largest city in the state, commonly referred to simply as Indiana. After Hoagland and Linda married, they decided to settle in this city. With the husband's high income, they bought a luxurious apartment in the area, meaning financial worries were virtually non-existent for them. Hoagland was a man known for his humor and wit, making Linda feel joyful and happy when she was with him. The couple had lived together for 10 years and had 2 sons, Matthew, who was 9 years old, and Douglas, who was 6. Their family of 4 had a good relationship. Hoagland often took his wife and 2 sons on vacations to various places. However, at one point, Linda suddenly noticed a significant change in her husband. He became quiet and less talkative, often locking himself in his room with an expression of worry and restlessness. He was completely different from his usual self and no longer participated in family conversations. Linda guessed that perhaps the recent work pressure was too much, causing this change in her husband. However, things were not as simple as she thought. On the morning of February 10, 1993, which was a Wednesday, Linda took her son Douglas to school as usual before heading straight to work. The day passed quickly, and at 4:45 p.m., just before the end of the workday, the office phone rang. Linda looked at the caller ID, and it was her husband, Hoagland. She found it odd because he rarely called at this time, wondering if something serious had happened. Hoagland said, "I'm not feeling well, on my way to the hospital." After hearing this, Linda asked him to wait a few more minutes so she could finish work and take him to the hospital. But unexpectedly, the husband on the other end of the line said, "I can't wait any longer. I'm going now." Then he hung up. Hoagland seemed very impatient. He didn't mention where he felt unwell or which hospital he was going to. Hearing her husband's voice sounding okay, Linda thought the issue wasn't too serious and planned to ask for more details once he returned from the checkup. After work, Linda went to pick up her son Douglas from school, and they both returned home. She still believed in her mind that her husband had finished his medical examination and returned home, but that wasn't the case. Only her older son, Matthew, was at home, and when asked, he didn't know where his father had gone, stating he had been home all day. Hearing this, Linda became very angry because Hoagland was supposed to take Matthew to school in the morning, yet he left him alone at home, showing no concern. Linda wanted to call her husband to get to the bottom of the story, but his phone was always off. He hadn't specified which hospital he was going to when he left, and now she needed to clarify everything. So for the next hour, Linda called nearly all the local hospitals, but none confirmed having any record of Richard Hoagland's visit. Where had her husband gone all day, and why hadn't he returned? Later, Linda discovered that Hoagland's belongings were virtually untouched. Strangely enough, it was February, bitterly cold outside, yet his usual coat was still hanging on the hook. What could be so urgent that he would leave without his coat in this weather? At 7 p.m., while still fussing around the house, the phone rang unexpectedly. Linda saw it was her husband calling and quickly picked up. On the other end, Hoagland said, "I'm so tired of this life. It would be better if I wasn't here." Linda was shocked, just about to speak when he hung up. A few hours later, Hoagland called again, saying, "I don't want to go to jail, so I won't be coming back." And just like before, without giving Linda a chance to say anything, he hung up. Due to her husband's sudden disappearance and strange behavior, Linda decided to report the incident to the police. A few days later, the investigation team found Hoagland's car parked in the lot at Indianapolis International Airport. After inquiries, they found no record of him buying a ticket or any exit documentation. This meant that although Hoagland's car was at the airport, it seemed the man himself hadn't boarded a plane to escape. Upon receiving this news, Linda searched the house carefully once more. She found that Hoagland's clothes, toothbrush, and daily essentials were all still there, including his usual travel suitcase. It appeared Hoagland wasn't planning a long trip. On February 14th, Hoagland called home. The next day, February 15th, he called again. The content of these calls was quite similar to the previous ones, essentially meaning he no longer wanted to live with Linda. He hung up abruptly each time, leaving his wife no chance to ask questions. Linda then traced where these calls came from. The first call was made from Venezuela and the second from Aruba, yet Hoagland had no record of leaving the country, which was quite bizarre. In the following months, there was no new information about Hoagland until May 1993, on Matthew's 10th birthday, when he received a birthday card signed by his father. A few more months passed. On Douglas' birthday, he too received a birthday card signed by his father with a $50 bill inside. By looking at the handwriting, it was clear that Hoagland had written them himself. "Douglas, happy birthday. You are an extraordinary boy. Dad loves and misses you so much. Let Mom spend this money for you, or you can save it yourself. Perhaps we'll meet again one day, and I'm sure I won't recognize you. Goodbye. Take good care of your mom. Okay?" This birthday card left Linda and her two sons feeling extremely sad. Hoagland clearly could have returned home, but he chose not to. Was there something he couldn't speak of? Besides Linda, the police were also very keen to understand why this happened. They began to suspect her because all the information from start to end was provided by Linda, with no one to verify it. In the following days, the police team visited Linda several times for interrogation. She consistently swore that she truly did not know where her husband had gone, and insisted that everything she had reported was the truth. The reason the police suspected Linda was that Hoagland was involved in a theft case. Initially, before the man went missing, the police had assigned someone to monitor him. They suspected that both had planned this event, and that Linda knew where her husband was hiding. Hoagland's disappearance might have been to escape punishment. He could have gone somewhere to wait out the storm, with Linda bringing the children to reunite once things calmed down. However, these were just speculations from the police, with no evidence to substantiate them. Currently, Linda's situation was very chaotic. She both loved and hated Hoagland. She couldn't believe he would abandon her and the children like this, even thinking that he might be in some kind of danger and forced to act this way. Linda still held out hope that the police could help find her husband, as Hoagland was the main breadwinner of the family. Since he left, she immediately fell into a severe financial crisis. Moreover, before Hoagland disappeared, he had incurred a large debt, and now Linda was responsible for it. This completely devastated her. Time passed, and the court ruled that Hoagland and Linda were officially divorced, but their lives had been brutally shattered. After that, Hoagland ceased all contact with the family, while Linda, due to financial pressure, had to sell their house and car and move with her children to live with her parents. Not long after moving, Linda felt as though someone was watching her. She saw someone in one place, then encountered them again elsewhere, which seemed very suspicious. Linda's father also discovered that their home phone had been bugged. Initially, they thought it might be the police investigating them, but later they felt that the police couldn't intrude like this without consent. It was likely that Hoagland had crossed someone outside, and now these people wanted to get revenge on his family. This made Linda worry and lose sleep for a long time, until, unable to bear it anymore, the whole family moved to Hancock County, Indiana, to live a secluded life. Each morning, when the two boys went to school, they would wait at a neighbor's house to catch the bus, to prevent strangers from knowing their family's location. After that, those suspicious individuals vanished. By 2003, 10 years had passed since Hoagland's disappearance, and due to the inability to find him over such a long period, the court declared him legally dead. At that time, Linda had remarried and started a new life of her own. Everyone thought they would never find Hoagland again, but the story didn't end there. In 2016, when Linda was 59, she received an unexpected call from someone named Anthony Cardio, who was the sheriff of Pasco County, Florida. On the phone, the officer asked, "Do you know Richard Hoagland?" Linda, of course, knew this man. He was her ex-husband who had been missing for over 20 years, the one who had left her with painful memories throughout her life. When asked that question, Linda thought the police were investigating her again. But then Cardio continued, "We found Richard Hoagland, and he's alive." Hearing this, Linda was completely stunned. Hoagland had been missing for 23 years and had been legally declared dead over a decade ago. How could he be found like this? She didn't believe what the officer was saying at all. However, after hearing the explanation, Linda finally understood everything. Now, let's turn back time to 1993 to understand the full story. At that time, Hoagland was tired of his current life. He decided to abandon his family, leave his home in Indiana, and move to Florida. Upon arriving, with little cash on hand, Hoagland chose to rent a small apartment with an elderly man as the landlord. The landlord enjoyed chatting with Hoagland and often spoke of his son, Terry Somaski, who was a fisherman. 2 years prior, Terry had unfortunately died in a boating accident at the age of 33. They got along well, and the landlord frequently shared interesting stories about his late son, which helped Hoagland learn more about him. One day, Hoagland accidentally found the death certificate of the landlord's son. He took advantage of the landlord's absence to steal those documents. Later, Hoagland used these documents to acquire a new birth certificate and successfully obtained a new driver's license. In the US, the federal government hadn't yet issued national identity cards. Instead, they used the SSN Social Security number to identify individuals. The driver's license also displays each person's SSN, so one could say the driver's license serves as identification in America. When Hoagland received that driver's license, he officially assumed the identity of Terry Somaski, the supposedly deceased son of the landlord. For Hoagland, this new identity was extremely important and fitting, because Terry had never been married, nor had children, and everyone who knew him thought he was dead. One could say this new identity was very safe. No one could find him. By 1995, 2 years after Hoagland left his family in Indiana for Florida, he met and married a woman named Mary. Mary knew nothing about her husband's past. After getting married, they lived and worked in a small town in Pasco County, Florida. Hoagland cruelly abandoned his wife and 2 sons in Indiana, then used this fake identity to marry Mary. His new wife later gave birth to another son for Hoagland. This man seemed to take pleasure in his bizarre, condemnable actions. The faux Terry not only found new employment in Florida, but also obtained a pilot's license and bought himself a private plane. His colorful life continued to unfold this way. Thanksgiving is a traditional American holiday, and on this occasion, people from all walks of life return to gather with their families, no matter where they work or travel. Mary noticed something very strange about her husband. He seemed to have no family at all. This made her somewhat suspicious, but each time, Hoagland found convincing excuses to deflect her doubts. After living together for a long time, Mary got used to it and stopped asking questions. Initially, everything went smoothly until 2013, when while browsing a family website, Terry's nephew unexpectedly discovered a man named Terry Somaski living in Central Florida. The data indicated this man was still alive. This seemed unbelievable to the nephew, who knew his uncle had died in early 1991. How could he still be alive? Moreover, he found that Terry had married in December 1995 and obtained a pilot's license shortly thereafter. Could this all be the work of spirits? After some calm reflection, the nephew concluded that someone must have stolen his uncle's identity, as a deceased person couldn't possibly have a pilot's license. However, unsure of the true identity and fearful of retaliation from the impersonator, he hesitated to act rashly. He pondered for 3 years before finally gathering the courage to report it to the police. In July 2016, Anthony Cardio, the sheriff of Pasco County, Florida, knocked on the door of the fake Terry. At that time, Hoagland, now 63, answered the door with his wife and son inside the house. Seeing the police, the whole family felt bewildered, not knowing what was happening. Sheriff Cardio then asked Hoagland his name, to which he replied, "I am Terry Samaski," while pulling out his driver's license to prove his identity. After seeing the information on the card, the sheriff gave a slight smile and produced a death certificate from 1991 with the name Terry Samaski on it. Hoagland fell silent upon seeing this. He knew his identity theft had been uncovered and had no choice but to confess. Mary and their son were shocked upon hearing the truth, unable to accept that they bore the name of a deceased fisherman. Since Hoagland quickly admitted to his illegal actions, he was arrested immediately. A year later, the local Supreme Court issued a verdict. Hoagland was convicted of unlawfully using another's personal information and sentenced to 2 years in prison. In 2018, after being released, Hoagland decided to return to his home state of Indiana. His previous actions had caused significant harm to both his and his ex-wife's families, particularly to his youngest son, Douglas, who, lacking fatherly care from a young age, ended up being sentenced to 8 years in prison for drug-related charges during his college years. Before Hoagland was imprisoned, Douglas had learned that his father was still alive after accidentally hearing news in prison about a man who had heartlessly abandoned his family and disappeared for 23 years. Douglas immediately recognized this man as his father. When asked how she felt upon learning that her ex-husband was still alive, Linda sighed and replied, "I can't quite remember how I felt at that moment." In reality, after learning the truth, Linda was furious. She took Hoagland to court, demanding compensation of $1.8 million for child support. From start to finish, Hoagland never uttered an apology. Story 3. The main character of the story is Lu Huanrong, the prototype for the male protagonist Chen Gilin in the film Eliminating 3 Evils, which is currently making waves at Chinese box offices. However, compared to the assassin Chen Gilin, Lu Huanrong is much more ferocious, mad, and bizarre. As Taiwan's #1 underworld assassin, Lu Huanrong traveled far and wide to do charity. He donated rice and contributed to disaster-stricken areas. Even in his last days before being arrested, ignoring the risk of capture, he decided to join the turf wars to fund better meals for orphan children. When Lu Huanrong was sentenced, many Taiwanese citizens called for his pardon, and lawyers offered to appeal his case for free. All of them saw Lu Huanrong as a hero. Even in his final moments, many of those he had helped gathered outside the prison to bid him farewell and pray. Lu Huanrong was born in 1957 in a slum in Beidong, Taichung. In reality, this was a military village, a temporary resettlement area for Chinese military officers and their families after Chiang Kai-shek's defeat. What was supposed to be a temporary shelter turned into a lifelong residence for many families. Later, this slum became a symbol of poverty and backwardness in Taiwan. When Lu Huanrong was born, his parents had already been living in this slum for over 10 years. His father was once a famous colonel, but now, with everything completely changed, he could only run a fruit stall in the resettlement area with his wife. Their family life was extremely difficult, but the scariest thing wasn't the poverty. It was the bullying. The reason was that, after the military withdrawal, there was a sudden influx of outsiders, putting tremendous pressure on the local residents' living space. Conflicts between locals and immigrants were frequent. Naturally, the poor immigrant soldiers in the military village became the targets of local residents' anger. Moreover, the mainland's economy was becoming increasingly worse. When Lu Huanrong was 10, the military housing area became a haven for gangsters. Thugs wreaked havoc in the village, tormenting honest people. As a child, Lu Huanrong often had to helplessly watch his mother kneel on the ground, begging those ruthless men for mercy. But of course, her pleas were in vain. His family was regularly threatened, extorted, and attacked. Growing up in such an environment, Lu Huanrong learned early on the principle: kneeling doesn't bring success. To avoid being bullied, there was only one way: stand firm on your own 2 feet. However, Lu Huanrong's method of standing up was unique. Instead of choosing to attend police school, he decided to immerse himself in that dangerous underworld. At that time, Taiwan's underworld could be divided into 2 main types. The first was gangs formed by locals, existing since the late 19th century, during Japanese colonial rule, often bullying the immigrants in the slums. The second type was formed by settlers for self-defense, gradually becoming more powerful. The disputes and conflicts between these gangs escalated over time. Before graduating high school, Lu Huanrong decided to drop out and join a small gang operating in central Taichung. This group was established by immigrants. As a new member, Lu Huanrong started with minor tasks, like collecting protection money in villages. But Lu Huanrong was different. He was straightforward, honest, handing over every penny he collected without keeping any for himself. He was also very loyal. When he saw his gang brothers being bullied, no matter how close or distant, he would be the first to grab a weapon and jump into the brawl. This made Lu Huanrong rise like a star in the underworld, successfully attracting the attention of the big bosses. Then Lu Huanrong joined the Bamboo Union. From then on, no one dared to bully his parents anymore. Lu Huanrong was very satisfied with his decision. But an unfortunate incident ended all his opportunities. One day, after collecting protection money, Lu Huanrong was about to return when he accidentally encountered one of his gang brothers being attacked by a group from Beituan. Without a word, Lu Huanrong picked up a stick and charged into the melee. Quickly, he gained the upper hand, becoming increasingly fierce. Among the opponents was Brother Mao, a well-known gang leader who had also joined the fight. Lu Huanrong still had no intention of stopping. As a result, he accurately struck Brother Mao's head with the stick. In an instant, fresh red blood flowed like water. Only then did Lu Huanrong come to his senses, shocked by what he had done. He threw away the stick and ran. To avoid pursuit from Brother Mao's group, Lu Huanrong didn't dare go home, living in hiding everywhere. More than half a month later, Lu Huanrong unexpectedly received a message from his father. "The rumors have calmed down. Everything's fine now. Come home, son." To young Lu Huanrong, family was sacred. No one else could deceive him, only his family. Missing home terribly, he immediately set off to return. But he never imagined that this letter was a trap set by his own father. As soon as he got home, before he could even eat 2 bites of rice, Lu Huanrong was grabbed by a group of people who rushed in from outside. These were all friends of his father, invited to capture his son. In that moment, Lu Huanrong's sole belief and love completely collapsed. He couldn't understand why his father would do this to him. Dropping out of school, becoming a gangster, wasn't all he did just to protect his mother, his sister, to protect his family. He had never thought about his own benefits when diving into this dark world. Why would his family treat him like this? Lu Huanrong looked at his father with anger and despair. But his father couldn't meet his eyes. Afterward, he was sentenced to 4 years and 10 months in prison. During this time, his father tried to visit, but was harshly refused. Lu Huanrong hated his father for betraying him. But eventually, thanks to the advice of the prison wardens, he agreed to meet his father. Initially, Lu Huanrong planned to give his father a piece of his mind as soon as he saw him. But when he saw his father's haggard face behind the bars, Lu Huanrong suddenly felt a sourness in his nose, a truly bitter feeling. In his mind, his father was always a proud soldier. But now, before him stood a man in his early 40s with white hair, a hunched back, head bowed, eyes full of tiredness and worry. Lu Huanrong realized he was wrong. It turned out his father only wanted him not to go astray, only hoped that he could live honestly, decently. Father and son sat there, looking at each other through the bars for a long time, but no words were spoken. The visit ended with a sigh from the father. On the day of his release, Lu Huanrong knelt in front of his father, bowed his head to the ground 3 times, swearing to return to a life of righteousness. Although the Bamboo Union was reluctant to lose such a star, they respected his decision. They promised that if Lu Huanrong couldn't make ends meet in the future, the Bamboo Union would always keep a seat open for him. From then on, Lu Huanrong truly changed. He returned to school, dreaming of becoming an officer like his father, standing tall, not bowing down. However, all he received was mockery from his school friends, because someone with a criminal record couldn't apply to the military academy. With no other choice, Lu Huanrong enlisted for military service. After completing his training, he wanted to stay on as a professional soldier. But reality dealt him another harsh blow. Those with a criminal record could not advance further in the armed forces. Completely disappointed and disheartened, Lu Huanrong could only return to the slum, continuing to help his father sell fruit to make ends meet. But his fate didn't stop there. One day, just as Lu Huanrong had finished setting up his fruit stall in the market and was about to head home, the kind village chief suddenly appeared, pulling him aside to whisper, "Run quickly. The local police will arrest you because of your criminal record." At that time, it was a period of maintaining order. If the police believed someone was acting suspiciously, regardless of whether they had committed an offense, no trial was needed. Anyone could be arrested. People with criminal records like Lu Huanrong were under strict surveillance. He would soon be arrested to set an example for others. From disappointment, Lu Huanrong became completely desperate about the state of affairs. His words have been passed down to this day. If a white cloth has a black stain, it will never be considered clean. So it would be better to turn that white cloth completely black. And thus, he chose to return to the Bamboo Union. On the day of his return, Lu Huanrong was welcomed with great enthusiasm. The big boss kept his promise from years ago, personally attending the welcome party for his protege. Lu Huanrong, like a fish returning to water, quickly took on an important role within the gang. In his own words, "As long as you dare to be ruthless, as long as you're strong enough, you're invincible. Everything else is useless." However, Lu Huanrong's name truly became famous when he won a gang fight a year later. Alongside the Bamboo Union, the Feng Yuan gang was also notoriously brutal in the area. Feng Yuan was founded by 17 individuals. Thanks to 17 swords that never left their bodies, they controlled the Feng Yuan territory. Hence, people in the underworld called them the 17 Swords of Feng Yuan. That year, there was a territorial dispute between the Bamboo Union and Feng Yuan. Leading the charge for the Bamboo Union was Lu Huanrong. Despite being skilled in martial arts, Lu Huanrong found it challenging to stand against such a brutal group. Both sides plunged into chaos, and Lu Huanrong was separated from his comrades, chased into a dead-end alley. Seeing the opponent's gleaming sword, Lu Huanrong was somewhat panicked. Fortunately, he suddenly noticed a watermelon cart nearby. He quickly grabbed a knife, turned around, and directly attacked his opponent. The boss of Feng Yuan fell on the spot. Seeing their leader down, the gang members immediately scattered. Under Lu Huanrong's leadership, the Bamboo Union achieved a significant victory, and Lu Huanrong also made a new discovery. Even after killing someone, no police came for him, because in this underworld, no one dared to report a crime. Taking the life of a major boss in the underworld at just over 20 years old, Lu Huanrong immediately solidified his position in the criminal world. He grew increasingly confident in what he did. No matter who he killed, he didn't have to worry about being arrested. The underworld began to whisper about Lu Huanrong, the emerging star, incredibly brave and fearless. Not long after, these rumors reached someone's ears. With the support of this person, Lu Huanrong would gradually climb to the top of the underworld. That person was Dong Guichin, who could call the wind and summon the rain in Taiwan's underworld. Also the top boss of the Bamboo Union. The Bamboo Union had a total of 8 factions: Zhong, Shao, Ren, Ai, Xin, Yi, He, Ping. Dong Guichin was the head of the Zhong faction. He greatly admired Lu Huanrong for his integrity and decisiveness, so he quickly sought him out. Lu Huanrong also agreed swiftly, understanding that the Bamboo Union had become too small to contain his bright future. Moreover, being both from mainland China, Lu Huanrong quickly became Dong Guiqin's most trusted man. Less than 2 months after joining the Bamboo Union, Dong Guiqin called Lu Huanrong into his office, pulling out a photo, asking if he knew the person. Lu Huanrong only needed to glance at the photo to recognize Lu Longheng, the boss of the Dahu gang, who had reigned over Taichung for many years. Typically, gangs formed by locals had assets and preferred to settle in the bustling areas of the city for profit. On the other hand, immigrant gangs were different. They were poor. Therefore, to grow, they had no choice but to fight for territory with other gangs. But the territory was limited. Conflict was inevitable. The Bamboo Union was a particularly large immigrant gang. Hence, they needed someone as ruthless as Lu Huanrong for territorial expansion. Eliminate him, Dong Guiqin told Lu Huanrong. Although he knew it was an extremely difficult task, Lu Huanrong didn't ask any questions because he understood very well to have a place in this world you could only choose either protect the big boss or become the big boss. Otherwise, he would forever remain a nobody. Lu Huanrong chose to take responsibility. Taking Lu Longheng's life was indeed challenging. Not only did he always travel with a group of bodyguards, but he also had 4 lookalikes dressed identically, doing the same activities and riding in the same car. It was impossible to distinguish between the real monkey and the fake monkey. So for many years, despite constant threats from enemies, no one could bring Lu Longheng down. Therefore, the underworld called him the cat with 9 lives. After accepting the mission, Lu Huanrong didn't rush in, but spent 3 months observing and tracking the opponent's every move, to the point where he knew which finger Lu Longheng used to pick his nose. Who was real, who was fake, naturally could no longer fool Lu Huanrong. Lu Huanrong also discovered a crucial secret. Lu Longheng was afraid of his wife, so every night, no matter how late, he would rush home. But he had a young mistress outside. The cat and mouse often met at a hotel. That was the time when no one could follow and protect him. Lu Huanrong clearly saw his opportunity. A month later, on October 23, 1983, Lu Longheng went to the hotel to meet his lover again. Feeling safe, he sent his bodyguards home first. Of course, this boss had no idea that Lu Huanrong and his brothers were in a car not far away, watching and waiting for the chance. 2 hours later, a man left the hotel. It was Lu Longheng, having just finished his business. Without a word, Lu Huanrong opened the car door, took 2 steps, loaded his gun, raised his hand, and pulled the trigger. A series of actions smooth and without hesitation, Lu Longheng fell on the spot, and Lu Huanrong didn't hesitate for a second, quickly jumping back into the car and leaving the scene. Famous from a gang fight, having joined the Bamboo Union for less than 6 months, Lu Huanrong was quickly promoted to the secretary of the Zhong faction. No one dared to casually mention his name anymore. Lu Huanrong also became the top assassin in the underworld. Regardless of whether they were from inside or outside the gang, people came to him to solve problems. One day, Niu Guilin, a boss from Bard district in Taoyuan City, came to Lu Huanrong. They were also old friends. Niu Guilin had just lost 500 million in gambling. Unable to pay his debts, he had been chased for days in a very miserable state. Niu Guilin was extremely angry. He sought help from his good friend, Lu Huanrong. The person who had a feud with Niu Guilin was no ordinary enemy. That was Yang Baifeng, the boss of the Lin Shan gang. He was also a notorious figure, surviving and thriving through sheer brutality. After becoming a boss, he always had a group of lackeys surrounding him. Yang Baifeng was even more troublesome than the 9-lived cat Lu Longheng. But due to Niu Guilin's plea, Lu Huanrong couldn't refuse. Despite being Taiwan's renowned marksman, in a short time, he couldn't get close to his enemy. After half a year of waiting, the opportunity finally came. If you've ever watched the film Eliminating 3 Evils, you certainly know this iconic opening scene. A veteran underworld boss suddenly dies. His brothers prepare for a grand funeral. Naturally, reputable figures in the underworld will attend. According to the unspoken rules, during the funeral, no matter how deep the grudges, all participants must set them aside. Inside the funeral hall, everything must be absolutely peaceful and smooth. Outside the hall, however, anyone can do whatever they want. This event actually happened in real life. At Big Xiong's funeral, Yang Baifeng was also invited to attend. Bound by the unspoken rules, he let his guard down. Niu Guilin could never imagine that even someone like him had to follow the rules, while there would be someone else ready to defy the script. In the funeral hall, Yang Baifeng leisurely sat drinking wine. He completely trusted in the unspoken rule. No matter how great the enmity, today would be a peaceful day. But as the banquet was about to end, unexpectedly, someone approached from the front without a word, raised a gun, and aimed it at Yang Baifeng's forehead. That person was Lu Huanrong. While Yang Baifeng was still in a daze, not understanding what was happening, the Bamboo Union's assassin moved closer, pulling the trigger 4 more times. The boss's face was no longer intact. Afterward, Lu Huanrong confidently threw the gun aside and walked out of the hall. No one dared to stop him. Everyone present was utterly shocked by this madman. It was from this event that the assassin earned the nickname Mad Lu. Lu Huanrong's audacity quickly caught the attention of Chen Kaili, the head of the Bamboo Union. He became Chen's personal bodyguard. In the underworld, this was a good position for advancement. With the backing of the bosses, Lu Huanrong grew increasingly fierce. In early April 1984, Hong Guohua, the head of the Fengfei gang, used a mutual acquaintance to connect with Lu Huanrong. He paid a substantial amount to have Lu deal with his old enemy, Zhang Deki, the boss of the Yishan gang. Lu Huanrong, accompanied by his close subordinate Yao Guilin, approached Zhang Deki at a street-side bread stall. In broad daylight, they dragged the boss to Huku Cemetery. Zhang Deki fell on the spot. Within a year, Lu Huanrong had eliminated 3 major bosses in Taiwan. The news coming one after another caused the entire underworld to be gripped by fear and terror. Lu Huanrong was clearly a man of extreme coldness, completely unbound by rules. No one could predict if they would be the next target. Therefore, an ironic situation arose. A group of veteran underworld figures had their friends report the matter to the police, desperately seeking help to restore peace to Taiwan's underworld. Quickly, Lu Huanrong became the top name on the police's list of the most dangerous armed criminals. Lu Huanrong also began to be more cautious. Every time he went out, he planned every step meticulously. He would disappear without a trace, with each action hard to predict. But Lu Huanrong discovered something strange. No matter how careful he was never out of the police's sight, as if he had a GPS tracker on him. Thinking deeply about this, Lu Huanrong concluded, there must be a traitor. Realizing this, he began to sweat cold. For a month, Lu Huanrong secretly investigated. All clues led to someone he couldn't imagine. The traitor was his closest friend, Niu Guilin, the very person who had begged him to deal with Yang Baifeng. Why would he do such a thing? Unable to believe it was true, Lu Huanrong covertly set up a test for his friend. He knew Niu Guilin loved his luxury car, so he pretended to lend it to him for a few days. After Niu Guilin had his fun, Lu Huanrong received a call to return the car. They agreed to meet at a market on Beijing Road. Niu Guilin had been waiting there for a long time. After parking the car nearby, Niu Guilin left first, leaving Lu Huanrong to retrieve it himself. At this moment, Lu Huanrong was across the street, observing everything but not going to get the car immediately. He was waiting for an answer. That night, at every corner of the parking lot, a group of undercover police suddenly appeared. They had been hiding for a long time, ready to arrest Lu Huanrong. But after waiting half a day without seeing the assassin, they thought Lu Huanrong wasn't coming, and decided to call it off early. Disappointed beyond measure, Lu Huanrong couldn't believe that someone he considered a brother had seen him merely as a failure. He wanted to end this betrayal with his own hands, putting an end to years of brotherhood between them. 2 months later, Lu Huanrong reserved a private room at the Fuhua Hotel, organizing a party to welcome Niu Guilin, who had just returned from the Philippines. Both excited and happy, Niu Guilin continuously praised Lu Huanrong for his loyalty and morality. After 3 glasses of wine, Lu Huanrong suddenly changed his demeanor, becoming extremely aggressive. He flipped the dining table, loudly questioning why Niu Guilin had betrayed him. Intimidated by Lu Huanrong's fierce expression, Niu Guilin trembled, refusing to admit it. Lu Huanrong suppressed his anger, detailing every event at the parking lot. Niu Guilin fell silent. Lu Huanrong swung his knife, and one of Niu Guilin's arms fell to the ground. Niu Guilin profusely apologized, but it was too late. In the underworld, brotherhood and loyalty are paramount. He should have foreseen this outcome. A loud noise rang out. Niu Guilin was dead. Afterward, Lu Huanrong took Niu Guilin's body to a mountain and buried him carefully. In just a few short years, Lu Huanrong had truly become Taiwan's #1 assassin, shaking both worlds. Initially, he thought he would feel more relieved after catching the traitor. But unexpectedly, this was the last time he could be so reckless. In October 1984, a notorious case occurred in the United States. Chinese-American writer Lu Ilyong was assassinated in his home. The FBI got involved, quickly hunting down the perpetrator. It turned out that the one who pulled the trigger was Dong Guichin, the leader of the Zhong faction of the Bamboo Union, and the mastermind behind it was the gang's founder, Chun Kaili. The reason they did this was because the Chinese-American writer had written many things he shouldn't have in his books. This major crime severely deteriorated Sino-American relations. Under pressure from the U.S., in November 1984, Taiwan established Special Team 1 to arrest Chun Kaili and Dong Guichin. Lu Huanrong, Chun Kaili's personal bodyguard, was also on the special wanted list. Everything Lu Huanrong had built over many years collapsed in an instant. While in the Philippines, Lu Huanrong received news of his mother's death, worried to death about her son. This was the last straw, completely shattering Lu Huanrong's soul. Before becoming an underworld boss, his father had also passed away. Unable to face his parents, he couldn't even see his father one last time. These were the greatest pains in the life of Taiwan's #1 assassin, a guilt so profound that even in his final moments, Lu Huanrong could not forgive himself. The shock of losing his mother left Lu Huanrong unable to recover. He fled to Japan. There, he met a fellow countrywoman named Xiao Ji. Her husband, Liang Guokai, was one of the top 10 armed criminals, captured and executed in 1984. With no other choice, she had to live in exile in Japan. Perhaps Xiao Ji's fate reminded Lu Huanrong of his own past. They empathized with each other, came together, and shared their lives. This was Lu Huanrong's final solace. But those warm days didn't last long. On January 26, 1986, Lu Huanrong was arrested in Japan and extradited back to Taiwan. The person in charge of interrogating Lu Huanrong was chief of the anti-violence unit, Hu Yui. Knowing Lu Huanrong was very loyal and could not be coerced with harsh methods, Hu Yui chose to frequently talk and eat with him, treating him like a friend without mentioning anything about the case. Lu Huanrong understood Hu Yui's intentions, but was also moved by him. In his years of exile, only Hu Yui treated him like a friend. Whether this affection was genuine or feigned, it was the first friend he had. Not long after, Lu Huanrong decided to confess everything with one condition which Hu Yui agreed to. A week later, Lu Huanrong fulfilled his wish, which was to visit his mother's grave to say goodbye. He knelt for so long he couldn't stand up, tears streaming down the assassin's face in profound sorrow. This sight moved all who witnessed it. Upon returning, Lu Huanrong kept his promise, explaining everything. His explanations led many who heard the news to seek pardon for the unfortunate young man by any means. They protested, shouted, and begged. They believed Lu Huanrong was not guilty. Over the years, Lu Huanrong had done charity everywhere. He used the $1 million given to him to escape, donating it all to the poor. In the 1980s, this was truly a massive sum. In return, he accepted living in poverty and misery while on the run. There were even times when, hiding in an orphanage, seeing the poor children without food, he risked capture to rob a store to buy rice to improve their meals. Knowing this truth, the public gave Lu Huanrong a new nickname, the Dark Hero. Human nature is indeed very complex. To judge a person, one cannot simply rely on black and white, light and darkness, angels and demons. In January 1991, Lu Huanrong was sentenced at his first trial. Immediately after the verdict was announced, many citizens protested for clemency, and several lawyers offered to defend him pro bono. And indeed, light shone through. The judge rejected the death sentence at the first trial, changing it to life imprisonment for Lu Huanrong. In court, Lu Huanrong cried, thanking the judge for giving him a chance to start over, vowing not to let down everyone's kindness. Sadly, this decision was later overturned, and Lu Huanrong was ultimately sentenced to the original penalty. The public continued to fight for the man. However, on March 5, 1993, at his third trial, Lu Huanrong was still sentenced to death. Notably, he remained extremely calm, meeting with his lawyer with each statement affirming, "I have nothing to repay. Everyone should not worry. I thank everyone." Lu Huanrong began to learn painting to save his soul. During his 7 years of imprisonment, he painted a total of 42 paintings, all donated to the Women's Relief Fund, hoping to help the girls. On March 23, 1993, Lu Huanrong was executed. Before his death, he signed an organ donation agreement. 17 people were saved by him. In the final moments of the condemned man's life, countless citizens came to the execution ground to bid him farewell. Before entering, Lu Huanrong gave a slight smile, waved to those who came to see him off, and walked in peacefully. Before leaving, he drank a bottle of rice wine and a bottle of beer. Lu Huanrong said, "Many people think I am a hero, but I am not a hero. Only heroes are in the light. These are my last words." Story 4. In the dense jungles of southern India, stretching across thousands of square kilometers, lurked a king without a throne who left the government powerless and struck terror into the hearts of locals. The Green Forest Slayer. From a humble cowherd boy to a poacher, smuggler, and ultimately the bandit king of the forest, his life spiraled into an abyss of darkness. Over 36 years, he committed countless crimes, boldly declaring war on the police and frequently kidnapping high-ranking government officials, demanding colossal ransoms from the state. The Indian government poured every resource into the fight, deploying over 1,500 police officers to hunt him through the impenetrable forest for more than 3 decades. This prolonged battle, costing over 7.84 billion Indian rupees, approximately $105 million in 2025, was dubbed by the media as the largest, longest, and most expensive manhunt in Indian history. Gopinatham is a small village nestled in the southern part of Karnataka, India. Surrounded by towering mountains and seemingly endless forests, it's home to a vast array of wildlife. In its early days, the area was untamed and villagers survived by relying on the forest, enduring a life of immense hardship. Today, it has transformed into a tourist destination, where visitors can hike, cycle through the mountains, admire waterfalls, and even feed gentle small animals. Yet, this obscure village, tucked deep in the hills, first gained global attention through the story we're about to tell. Pandala was a kind-hearted and deeply dedicated forest ranger. Born on September 12, 1954, in Andhra Pradesh, southern India, he spent much of his childhood in rural areas with his grandmother. Those years of close connection with nature fostered a profound love for the forest, inspiring him to protect this green sanctuary. In 1976, Pandala graduated with distinction from Andhra University. 3 years later, he passed the entrance exam and officially became a forest ranger, assigned to the Karnataka Forestry Department. Initially, a ranger's job was straightforward, safeguarding forest resources and local wildlife. But at the time, southern India's forests were rich with precious sandalwood, tigers, elephants, and other rare species, making them a target for criminals. Illegal logging and poaching ran rampant, impossible to fully control. As a result, rangers' duties expanded beyond protecting the forest to include suppressing poaching, patrolling for security, and more. The village where Pandala was stationed faced harsh living conditions. Villagers often went hungry, and even clean drinking water was scarce. Moved by their plight, Pandala took the lead in building irrigation channels and water supply systems. He established mobile clinics and, using his own salary, constructed over 40 simple homes to shelter the homeless. His selfless actions and good deeds earned him deep respect from the villagers. Yet his challenges didn't end there. The forest was plagued by criminals who slaughtered elephants en masse to smuggle ivory, reaping massive profits. Witnessing the carnage, Pandala was heartbroken. To combat these brazen poachers, he rallied villagers to form an extensive intelligence network, compiling a detailed list of offenders. Working with the police, he devised meticulous plans, ultimately apprehending 120 forest bandits. Such feats struck fear into criminals, deterring many from reoffending. But soon, Pandala met his greatest adversary, the central figure of today's case, Q's Munisamy Varapan. Born on January 18, 1952, in Gopinatham, Karnataka, Varapan grew up in a poor family. The few acres of ancestral farmland seemed cursed. Nothing they planted thrived, leaving the family frequently starving. As a child, he survived by herding cattle for food. As he grew, he learned to hunt with his father. Varapan quickly displayed remarkable talent. He could navigate the dense forest with ease, pinpointing the hiding spots of prey. His eyesight was extraordinary, able to detect traces of birds from great distances. His uncle, Salvi Gonder, a notorious veteran poacher, recognized his nephew's potential during a hunting expedition. Taking Varapan under his wing, he mentored him closely. In 1962, at just 10 years old, Varapan, under his uncle's guidance, killed his first elephant. By 13, he began practicing with firearms. Astonishingly, he seemed born to wield a gun, his shooting skills improving rapidly. Within a year, he became a sharpshooter, hitting every target with precision. At 17, Varapan clashed with a fellow villager over hunting spoils. Without a word, he hacked the man with a machete and disposed of the body, evading a police investigation. From that moment, he embarked on a 36-year path as a ruthless criminal. In 1970, Varapan joined a poaching gang, diving headfirst into the immense profits of smuggling ivory. His hunting grounds expanded, spanning the forests along the borders of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala. This region was essentially a no-man's land, neglected by authorities, with police from the 3 states failing to coordinate. Once a criminal crossed state lines, pursuit often stopped. This allowed bandits to run rampant, turning the forest into their stronghold. The dense jungle was once home to thousands of elephants and countless precious sandalwood trees. But relentless poaching and logging decimated their numbers. Through smuggling ivory and sandalwood, Varapan amassed a fortune. To evade police, he hid most of his wealth deep in the forest, sharing only a portion with his family and villagers. Grateful for his generosity, villagers became his loyal informants, tipping him off whenever police were near. With this network of spies, Varapan grew emboldened, his audacity soaring. On August 27, 1983, during a poaching expedition, he brutally killed a forest ranger attempting to stop him. This act drew immediate attention from local police, and Pandala, with his intelligence network, resolved to capture this bandit at all costs. He collaborated with police to plan a massive sweep, setting an elaborate trap. But Varapan was no ordinary foe. Raised in the forest, he knew its terrain like the back of his hand. The moment police moved in, he vanished into the depths, aided by villagers' protection. Catching him was like finding a needle in a haystack. After 3 years of relentless pursuit, the police finally outmaneuvered him. Varapan fell into a trap and was arrested. Just as everyone breathed a sigh of relief, believing the ordeal was over, Varapan escaped in a stunning breakout from tight security. Later investigations revealed he had bribed a police officer, planting an insider to ensure his freedom. Pandala was furious. The man he had worked so hard to capture had slipped away. This failure became a thorn in his side, fueling his vow to bring Varapan to justice, no matter the time or effort required. After his escape, Varapan didn't lie low. Instead, he grew even more brazen. On August 26, 1986, he killed another forest ranger, Siddharama Naik, in Karnataka. In 1987, he kidnapped and assaulted Chidambaram, a forestry department official. On January 5, 1989, he killed 3 forest rangers in a single attack. On April 9, 1990, he openly targeted 4 police officers. These acts were sheer madness, defiant to the extreme. Beyond clashing with authorities, Veripan waged war against rival gangs over conflicting interests, wiping out 5 key members of an opposing group and cementing his reign as the unchallenged king of the Green Forest in the poaching underworld. Over time, his notoriety grew, and at its peak, his gang swelled to hundreds of followers. Remarkably, Veripan's cunning included doling out small favors to win far from fearing him. Many villagers saw him as a hero who robbed the rich to help the poor, daring to defy the powerful. In 1990, at 38, Veripan married Muthulakshmi, his most ardent admirer. They had 2 daughters after their marriage. Even with a family, he showed no restraint. Recognizing the growing power of this criminal empire, the Indian government could no longer stand idly by. Karnataka and Tamil Nadu joined forces, forming a special task force, STF, to combat the bandit. Pandala, with his wealth of experience, was appointed deputy commander. Learning from past failures and local dynamics, he devised a new strategy. Avoid direct confrontation and dismantle the gang from within, using persuasion as the primary tactic. He established a tree nursery in Veripan's hometown of Gopinatham. Pandala built temples, planted trees, and arranged jobs for villagers, paying them monthly wages. He publicly declared that any criminal who surrendered would receive leniency, be offered honest work, and have a chance to reform and lead a stable life. This approach proved highly effective. When the first surrenderer faced no harsh punishment, scores of gang members laid down their arms. Veripan's criminal network shrank dramatically, from hundreds to 40, then to just over 10. Even his own brother turned against him. To further solidify trust, Pandala hired lawyers for the surrenderers, securing reduced sentences and bail arrangements. Meanwhile, the STF didn't rest, conducting widespread forest searches and uncovering large caches of contraband and cash. These heavy losses enraged Veripan, who vowed revenge. He targeted villagers close to the police, hanging their heads on stakes as a warning. He planted mines to blow up police vehicles, using these acts to declare war on the government. The chaos didn't end there. In 1991, he kidnapped the son of a granite quarry owner, demanding 10 million Indian rupees, $133,000 in 2025, in ransom. The police negotiated it down to 1.5 million Indian rupees, $20,000, and secured the hostage's release. This successful ransom emboldened Veripan, and similar schemes followed. While his actions caused headaches for the police, they also exposed his desperation. More people began to see the dawn of victory on the horizon. In July 1991, Pandala's term with the STF ended. Normally, his duties would have concluded, and another might have stepped back. But Pandala couldn't let go. He volunteered to stay, determined to witness the day Veripan faced justice. The cost of this decision was tragically steep. On November 9, 1991, Pandala received a message from Veripan. It was clearly a trap, yet Pandala chose to go. Before leaving, he sent a message to his colleagues. But reality was cruel. The next morning, as he crossed a small stream outside Gopinatham, Pandala was fatally shot. Moments later, Veripan appeared, taking his head as a before swaggering away. Thus ended the brilliant but brief life of this devoted forest ranger. Many mourned Pandala's passing. Some called him naive. How could he trust a demon like Veripan? But those who knew him understood. Pandala wasn't foolish, but profoundly kind. He genuinely wanted to save more lives, even if it meant risking his own. He was a true hero. To honor his bravery, the government posthumously awarded him a medal and designated November 10th as Green Forest Martyrs' Day. Near Gopinatham, a memorial was built in his name, still visited by many today. After Pandala's death, Veripan, his sinister plan a success, grew even more unrestrained. He began attacking police stations, setting traps to ambush officers, and sparing no one, not even ordinary villagers. Anyone suspected of informing the police fell prey to his ruthless hand. In 1993, the Indian government, unable to tolerate his tyranny any longer, deployed the Border Security Force, BSF, to join the manhunt. Unexpectedly, during a firefight, they were outmaneuvered, losing over 20 soldiers in a crushing defeat. Yet the police's efforts weren't in vain. Relentless pressure shrank Veerapan's gang to just 5 core members. Seizing the momentum, the government offered a hefty 50 million Indian rupees, $667,000 bounty. On April 9, 1993, to retaliate against the crackdown, Veerapan orchestrated the Paler Blast. Using 50 kilograms of explosives, he detonated a bus carrying police, rangers, and villagers. Of the 41 aboard, 22 perished. This attack was the deadliest blow since the fight against Veerapan began, marking the most lethal bombing of the 20th century in Karnataka. The tragedy shocked the nation, prompting the government to raise the bounty to 150 million Indian rupees, $2 million, and deploy additional forces for a massive sweep. But the demon wasn't done. On May 24, 1993, he ambushed the STF, killing 6 officers. That July, in a chilling act, he strangled his newborn daughter because she wasn't the son he wanted. Even a tiger spares its cubs. Veerapan's cruelty shattered the bounds of humanity. He also eliminated a subordinate who threatened his dominance. A year later, exhausted from endless fleeing and clashes with police, Veerapan hatched an audacious plan to negotiate with the government for a pardon. He had already calculated his bargaining chip. In 1994, after meticulous plotting, Veerapan kidnapped Deputy Superintendent of Police Chidambarnathan and 2 of his subordinates. In November 1995, he abducted 3 more forest rangers. With these 6 hostages, he sent a recorded message to the government. The police were outraged by this demand. Setting aside the countless elephants he'd poached and sandalwood he'd smuggled, the sheer number of police, villagers, and rangers he'd killed made forgiveness unthinkable. When negotiations collapsed, Veerapan's fury ignited, plunging him into a frenzied state of vengeance. In 1996, he murdered 20 police officers and an informant. In 1997, he kidnapped 2 wildlife photographers and 9 forest rangers. This time, he proposed a new condition. I'll turn myself in, but I'll only accept 2 years in prison. Unsurprisingly, these talks also ended in failure. At this point, you might wonder, where did Veerapan get such brazen confidence? To take so many lives and still demand a pardon? The answer lies in the political force backing him, the patalimical Katchi PMK party. This political party in Tamil Nadu represented the interests of the Vanyar caste. India's caste system is an invisible social hierarchy that dictates a person's status and fate from birth. The Vanyar are one of the largest lower caste groups in Tamil Nadu and surrounding areas, meaning their support could sway elections due to their significant voting power. With the PMK's backing, Veerapan was more than just a terrorist and smuggler. He wielded political influence. Some politicians, eager to secure votes, openly courted him, even urging the government to grant him amnesty. With their help, Veerapan was recast as a hero defying the powerful, robbing the rich to aid the poor. Thus, Veerapan's decades-long reign in the forest wasn't solely due to his marksmanship and tactics. His true shield was the political patrons behind him. But that shield was about to lose its power. On July 30, 2000, Veerapan shocked India by kidnapping a legendary superstar doctor, Raj Kumar. No ordinary figure, Raj Kumar was hailed as one of India's greatest actors, amassing countless awards. The 39 films he starred in were remade 63 times by 34 other actors, translated into 9 languages, cementing his cinematic legend. His iconic film, Bangarata Manushya, The Golden Man, was named by Forbes as one of the 25 greatest acting performances in Indian cinema history, becoming a timeless classic cherished by millions. When news broke that 71-year-old Raj Kumar had been kidnapped, India descended into chaos. Fans rioted, vandalizing newspaper offices, marching, striking, and some, unable to bear the shock, took their own lives. To quell the unrest, the Karnataka and Tamil Nadu governments acted swiftly, dispatching the Kiran journalist R. Gopal to negotiate with Veerapan. Gopal, having interviewed him before, had some rapport. Veerapan issued a slew of demands, releasing Tamil political prisoners, securing water resources, but his true aim was clear: money. After 108 days in captivity, Raj Kumar was released. Though India never disclosed the cost, a police officer later revealed that Karnataka paid 200 million Indian rupees, $2.67 million USD in 2025 in ransom. This kidnapping revealed a lesser-known side of Veerapan to the world. Through close contact during negotiations, the journalists shared details few knew. Veerapan had dark skin, a thick signature mustache, and a slight build. Taciturn, he didn't seem like a killer at first glance, almost honest, even vulnerable. Yet, he was a true master of the jungle, a deadly sharpshooter who could gauge nearby strangers by the flight of birds. His forest survival skills were unmatched. An Indian official once called him Jungle Cat, noting his ability to mimic animal calls and navigate every cave and stream in the forest. The police were no match for him. Defending his early poaching, Veerapan argued, "Government officials can hunt deer in the forest with guns and bring meat home. Why can't I?" He admitted to bribing rangers and police for years, just pay, and they'd turn a blind eye. Much of his wealth went to bribes. He openly confessed to 120 crimes and boasted of wanting his life story filmed so the world would remember him. This arrogance sent chills down spines. Perhaps the ransom from Rajkumar's kidnapping left Veerapan satisfied. For nearly 2 years, he committed no crimes, living discreetly. But on August 25, 2002, likely after squandering his funds, he struck again, kidnapping Karnataka's former agriculture minister, Nagappa, and demanding an exorbitant ransom. This time, the police refused to pay, opting for a risky rescue mission. Tragically, it failed. Months later, Nagappa's bullet-riddled body was found. Strangely, the bullets matched the rifles used by the Special Task Force (STF). Were they stolen by Veerapan, or was Nagappa killed in a crossfire mishap? No one could say for sure. The unpredictable manhunt drew the nation's gaze to Veerapan. The government and police's credibility hung by a thread. Failure to bring him to justice would have dire consequences. Thus, the states united, launching a final operation dubbed Operation Cocoon. At 10:15 p.m. on October 18, 2004, in the thick darkness of a silent forest, Veerapan, suffering from a worsening eye condition, urgently needed medical care. With a gang member's help, he and 3 trusted lieutenants boarded an ambulance to reach a hospital. Unbeknownst to him, the driver was an undercover police officer. This informant had spent years earning Veerapan's trust. As the vehicle ventured deeper into the forest, Veerapan was inching closer to the police's inescapable trap. When the vehicle stopped, the driver leapt out. Instantly, countless shadows emerged from the darkness, swiftly forming a perimeter. Veerapan and his 3 lieutenants were trapped inside. With no escape, the police shouted 3 times, demanding surrender. But the tense, suffocating standoff shattered with a sudden gunshot. Veerapan fired first, breaking the deadlock. A fierce firefight erupted. In the end, Veerapan and his 3 lieutenants were shot dead on the spot. Thus ended the life of the 52-year-old bandit leader who had ruled the forest for 36 years. Police later tallied that Veerapan had killed at least 184 people, including 97 rangers and officers. To eliminate him, India spent a fortune. Tamil Nadu and Karnataka alone expended 1 billion Indian rupees, $13.3 million US, with total costs exceeding 7.84 billion Indian rupees, $105 million US. This was, without question, the largest, longest, and costliest manhunt in Indian history. In the forests where he operated, at least 2,000 elephants were brutally killed, 500 by Veerapan's gang. They smuggled ivory on foot out of the jungle, then shipped it by bus to Kerala for sale, amassing 160 million Indian rupees, $2.13 million US. When the ivory trade faltered, Veerapan turned to precious sandalwood. By smuggling 65 tons of sandalwood, he reaped a staggering 1.43 billion Indian rupees, $19 million US. After his death, His wife Muthulakshmi and 25 relatives faced charges for harboring a criminal and accepting bribes. Police seized 4 million Indian rupees, $53,300 in cash, significant gold, and 3 cars from them. Ultimately, due to insufficient evidence, Muthulakshmi and 10 relatives were acquitted. 13 others received 1-year sentences and fines of 150 Indian rupees, $2 each. After the trial, Muthulakshmi calmly stated, "Now I'm finally free to start a completely new life." Veerapan's remains were buried along the Kaveri River. Astonishingly, his funeral drew thousands of mourners. Supporters claimed he died unjustly, denied a chance to surrender, and was secretly tortured to death by police. Rumors even swirled that some politicians wanted him silenced to avoid exposing darker secrets. Pandala's father, upon hearing of Veerapan's death, was deeply moved. In Veerapan's hometown of Gopinatham, villagers celebrated with firecrackers and raised glasses, unleashing years of suppressed fear and anger. For over 20 years, they had lived under his shadow, afraid to enter the forest, unable to sell crops due to his brutality. A village caged invisibly. Now, the name that haunted their nightmares was history. News of Veerapan's demise spread rapidly across India. Media outlets raced to report it, calling it the end of the demon. Countless citizens shared the news, celebrating the close of a criminal era. Yet not everyone saw Veerapan as a villain. On April 25, 2013, at a youth cultural festival, some supporters hailed him as a youth icon, attempting to whitewash his crimes. This outrageous act infuriated victims' families and law enforcement, drawing sharp condemnation from Tamil Nadu's then Chief Minister, Jayalalitha. Despite the controversy, Veerapan's story continued to captivate, spawning films and books. Notably, after his death, villagers near the forest banded together, scouring the jungle for the treasure he reportedly hid. Despite years of searching, no one found it, yet the hunt persists. Some travel vast distances in pursuit, only to return empty-handed. Whether this treasure even exists remains a mystery. Story 5. In 2017, in Khao Swan Quang District, Kon Kaen Province in northeastern Thailand, a newlywed couple began their life together. The bride, Warasara Klinjui, was a vibrant, beautiful young woman with a gentle demeanor. The groom, a young and talented construction contractor, boasted solid financial stability. After their wedding, they shared a blissful period, deeply in love. Though the husband's work often took him away on business trips, he always made time to cherish his wife upon returning. Their bond was so tight-knit that it sparked envy among those around them. But in the spring of that year, a shocking tragedy struck when the young wife became the victim of a gruesome murder that sent shockwaves across Thailand. Now, let's uncover the details of this chilling case. The story unfolds in Kon Kaen Province, located in northeastern Thailand, often referred to as Konkoin. It's a key city recognized by the United Nations for its socio-economic development plans, alongside Chiang Mai, Songkhla, Nakhon, and Chonburi. Khao Swan Quang District, in the northern part of Kon Kaen, is rich in natural resources, with an economy rooted in agriculture, making it a vital hub for northeastern Thailand's farming industry. The area also boasts captivating tourist attractions, including temples, lakes, and nature parks. On Thursday, May 25, 2017, a farmer was foraging for mushrooms in a forest in Khao Swan Quang District. He ran a homestay and planned to prepare a signature dish for his guests. Mushrooms typically grow in low shrubs, nestled in damp, shaded grass. As he searched, something caught his eye in a pile of dry grass nearby. Spotting 3 large sheets of corrugated metal, he recalled from experience that the ground beneath such sheets stays moist, perfect for mushrooms. Curious, he approached to investigate, but as he drew closer, a foul stench filled the air. Suppressing his discomfort, he lifted one of the sheets. Beneath it was a shallow pit containing 2 plastic barrels, the source of the putrid odor. Driven by curiosity, he pulled a black plastic bag from one barrel. Upon opening it, he was horrified to discover human body parts inside. Terrified, he immediately alerted the police. Upon receiving the report, police swiftly arrived and sealed off the scene. They inspected the barrels and found 2 dismembered torsos. Forensic examination confirmed both belonged to a woman. The victim had been severed at the waist, her arms detached, with no signs of organ removal. Marks of a struggle were evident, though there was no evidence of sexual assault. A deep ligature mark around her neck revealed the cause of death: strangulation. Despite early decomposition, the victim appeared to be a young, slender woman. Police collected the victim's fingerprints and noted a distinctive butterfly tattoo on her body, cross-referencing it with recent missing persons reports. By late that evening, they identified her through the missing persons database. Werisara Klinjui, 23, from Bangkok. Werisara worked as a liquor promoter at a bar. Her mother had reported her missing the previous day. It was known that 3 months before the incident, Werisara had married a man, referred to here as A. Their marriage was reportedly happy and harmonious. She was friendly, well-mannered, and had no known enemies. But as police dug deeper, they uncovered critical clues. On the surface, Werisara's job involved promoting liquor at a bar, using her charm to encourage patrons to spend more. However, the role also involved sensitive activities. She engaged in intimate interactions with clients, including physical transactions. Werisara maintained a private clientele, fostering relationships with both men and women. Even after marriage, she continued her old lifestyle, including an intimate relationship with a woman we'll call B. Police identified 2 primary suspects. The first was her husband, under the theory that he killed her upon discovering her infidelity. The second was B, her lover, who might have acted out of jealousy over Werisara's marriage. The investigation promptly zeroed in on both. During this time, the case began drawing media attention. Headlines dubbed it a same-sex love triangle, fueling intense public interest across Thailand. B was the first summoned for questioning. She stated that she hadn't been able to contact Werisara since the evening of May 22nd. On May 24th, B called Werisara's mother to check on her. The mother revealed that Werisara's husband, A, had left for a business trip on May 20th, and Werisara hadn't gone with him. Sensing something was amiss, B urged the mother to report her missing to the police. During questioning, B cooperated fully and provided a solid alibi, clearing her of suspicion. B believed Werisara's husband was the likely culprit. She suspected he'd learned of the affair and fabricated the business trip story to deflect attention. In reality, he might have stayed in town, killed Werisara, then left to establish an alibi. Upon hearing of his wife's death, A rushed back from his worksite. He told police he'd been away since May 20th and only returned upon learning of the tragedy. Regarding his wife's infidelity, he claimed he was unaware until reading news reports, insisting he knew nothing prior. Police reviewed surveillance footage from A's workplace, confirming his presence at the construction site from May 20th until Werisara's body was found on May 25th overseeing operations. Colleagues vouched for him. After thorough scrutiny, police deemed A's alibi credible, officially ruling him out. Thus, the same-sex love triangle theory collapsed, leaving the case at a dead end. A shifting focus, police made a breakthrough after further investigation. Werisara was last seen on the afternoon of May 23rd, working at the bar. Surveillance from the bar, a nearby convenience store, and an ATM showed that later that evening, she used the ATM, then got into a car with a man. Fortunately, the cameras captured the man's face and the car's license plate clearly. Facial recognition quickly identified him. Wasan Namprom, 22, married, and a co-worker of Werisara's at the bar. The license plate revealed the car was a rental, and after the crime, it was heading toward the border. Wasan was named a direct suspect, designated the primary target, and a warrant was issued. On May 27th, Wasan and his wife were arrested. In her handbag, police found Werisara's phone, which the couple planned to sell. Wasan admitted involvement, but insisted his wife was uninvolved, only tasked with disposing of personal items. He claimed the real culprits were 3 women from the bar. Police brought him to the dump site to reenact the crime, and combined with collected evidence, the full truth began to emerge. The mastermind was identified as Priyanuk Nanwangchai, 25, a bar hostess and Werisara's co-worker. She was a social media star, flaunting designer goods and posing as a wealthy heiress. In reality, Priyanuk came from a troubled family in Konkan. Financial hardship forced her to drop out of school early to survive. After years of work, she saved enough for cosmetic surgery to transform her appearance. With her new look, Priyanuk secretly offered escort services at the bar and hosted risque live streams and revealing outfits to boost income, a stark contrast to the glamorous image she projected online. As for the motive, though they appeared friendly, Priyanuk and Werisara's relationship had soured a year earlier. In 2016, Werisara borrowed 40,000 Thai baht, approximately $1,100 in 2025, from Priyanuk, but failed to repay it fully over the years, sparking heated disputes. During that time, Priyanuk's boyfriend was jailed for drug trafficking, and she suspected Werisara had tipped off the police, sabotaging her and her boyfriend. Fueled by resentment, Priyanuk recruited 2 close friends, Kawita Rakhata, 26, and Apiwan Satayabundit, 28, to teach Werisara a lesson. They enlisted Wasan, another bar worker, instructing him to lure Werisara out under the pretense of meeting a client, then bring her to the car. The plan went off without a hitch. Werisara, unsuspecting, got into the car carefree. But upon seeing Priyanuk and the other women inside, she sensed danger and tried to leap out. The trio quickly subdued her. They taunted and threatened Werisara, then brutally assaulted her. Despite fighting back, Werisara couldn't break free. In a rage, she shouted, "If you touch me, my husband won't let you get away." Initially, Priyanuk's group only intended to scare her, but this threat sent their anger spiraling. At that moment, Wasan, behind the wheel, casually remarked, "Why not finish her off and be done with it?" Shockingly, his offhand comment was met with agreement. Priyanuk grabbed a plastic bag, wrapped it tightly around Werisara's neck, while the others pinned her limbs. They held firm until she stopped breathing. Realizing Werisara was dead, none showed panic or remorse. Instead, they discussed disposing of her body. They bought a saw, 2 plastic barrels, plastic bags, and 3 large metal sheets. Wasan drove to a rural guest house nearby, renting a room. There, they dismembered Werisara, wrapped the parts in plastic, and placed them in the barrels. Afterward, they headed to a nearby forest, dug a shallow pit, dumped the barrels, and covered them with the metal sheets to conceal their crime. With the deed done, all 4 fled. Wasan and his wife escaped to Laos, instructing her to destroy Werisara's phone and belongings. Meanwhile, the 3 women drove 11 hours to Myanmar. After Wasan's arrest and confession, police sealed off border areas, restricted movement, and issued warrants for the 3 women. Thai authorities contacted Myanmar for investigative support. For days, the case dominated headlines, gripping public attention. Priyanuk's name spread nationwide, earning her the moniker Sweetheart Killer. Remarkably, despite widespread wanted notices, the 3 fugitives showed no signs of fugitives. Rather than hiding, they brazenly posted daily life updates on social media, as if taunting authorities. Priyanuk, in particular, drew attention with confident selfies, amassing a large online following. As time passed, public opinion split. Many youths idolized Sweetheart Killer Priyanuk, turning her outfits into hot fashion items. Some saw her as an icon, mimicking her style and mannerisms, making everything about her a trend. Conversely, others decried the case's negative societal impact, demanding harsh punishment for the trio as a deterrent. Priyanuk's sister, in a media interview, pleaded for her to surrender, reassuring her that no matter how dire, she shouldn't despair. A week after the murder, Thai and Myanmar police collaboration uncovered the trio's whereabouts. They were hiding in Tachalek, a border city in eastern Myanmar. Security footage from a small-town clothing store clearly captured the 3 women on the run. Astonishingly, They made no effort to conceal their identities, openly roaming crowded areas and casually sightseeing. Upon receiving the tip, police descended on the town, preparing a large-scale sweep. Realizing escape was futile, the women stepped forward and surrendered voluntarily. Prianish, the ringleader, admitted they had reached Tachalek before the border lockdown. Their striking appearances quickly landed them jobs at a local bar. But as the police dragnet tightened, they fled the bar, hiding in the small town. After much discussion, they concluded endless running wasn't sustainable. Rather than being captured, they chose to turn themselves in, hoping for leniency. Once their location was exposed, they walked into the town's police station to confess. Their dramatic appearance instantly captivated the public. Soon after, they were extradited to Thailand. Remarkably, during their escorted transfer to a Thai detention center, they weren't handcuffed. Flanked by a few officers, they appeared relaxed, chatting cheerfully, showing no fear or regret as criminals might. They seemed to revel in the attention. The trio quickly became online celebrities. Some local police even acted friendly, offering snacks and drinks. With one reportedly asking for a selfie, the detention center resembled a fan meet and greet. While detained, the women received special treatment. Not only could they use phones, but they also applied face masks and bantered with staff. Before a police press conference, they smoked and did their makeup right in the station. This sparked a growing backlash online, with many condemning the police for excessive leniency. Werisara's mother voiced outrage, unable to accept that her daughter's killers were treated so indulgently. Police countered that, pending a court verdict, the trio were merely suspects, entitled to legal rights. To quell public anger, 2 officers who took selfies with Priya Inuk and posted them online were reassigned. At the press conference, the women recounted the crime. Though their statements echoed Wasson's, their direct admission amplified public reaction. A new bride, a hostess, dismemberment, body dumping, illicit transactions, infidelity, a same-sex love triangle, sweetheart killer, and face masks, smoking, and makeup in detention. All the hottest buzzwords converged in one case. It became a national talking point. Even the handbag the women carried during their arrest became a coveted fashion item. The saw used in the crime was replicated as keychains sold in shops. Over time, the case's fervor faded. But on the trial date, a Facebook post reignited attention. On March 1, 2018, 10 months after the murder, the trial opened at Khon Koin's local court. The 4 defendants, Priya Inuk Nan Wangchai, Kawita Rachada, Apiwan Satyabundit, and Wasson Nampram, faced murder and other charges. Wasson's wife, Jijarat Pramhun, was charged with theft. Werisara's grandmother stood outside the courtroom, clutching her granddaughter's portrait, lighting incense and praying that the perpetrators would face just punishment under the law. Court rules prohibited phones during the trial. Yet, mid-hearing, a Facebook post surfaced, featuring a screenshot of a chat with Priya Inuk. In it, she mentioned being at the trial and thanked the person for not shunning her, despite her status as a suspect. Shockingly, the post included a selfie of Priya Inuk and the other 2 female suspects posing in the courtroom, making heart shapes with their hands. Their brazen nonchalance stood in stark contrast to the grief and outrage of Werisara's family outside. This blatant disrespect for the law reignited a firestorm on social media. Many condemned their arrogance, raising concerns about Thailand's justice system. Conversely, Priya Inuk's fans went wild, viewing the act as a symbol of defiance. Some even proclaimed the trio innocent. At the trial, the prosecution argued that the defendants had premeditated Werisara's murder, openly flouting the justice system, and deserved severe punishment. The defense countered that the 3 women initially had no intent to kill. They only meant to intimidate Werisara and let her go. But her threats provoked them, leading to an impulsive act in the heat of the moment. Furthermore, their voluntary surrender showed remorse and awareness of their wrongs, prompting the defense to request leniency. Before the court, Priya Inuk testified that they hadn't planned to harm Werisara. She expressed regret for her actions, admitting that guilt kept her sleepless every night. The judge deemed the trio's crime heinous, warranting life imprisonment. However, considering their guilty pleas and cooperation with investigators, the court opted for reduced sentences. Per the verdict, Priya Inuk Nanwangchai and Kawita Rachada were sentenced to 34 years and 6 months in prison. Apuwan Sathibundit received 33 years and 9 months, while Wazan Nampram got 23 years, 4 months, and 20 days. Wazan's wife, Jitarat Pramkin, was sentenced to 1 year for theft. Additionally, the 4 main culprits were ordered to pay 100,000 Thai baht yaos $2,800 in 2025 in funeral expenses to Warisara's family, with a 7.5% annual interest rate accruing from the crime's date until fully paid. With this ruling, the case was officially closed. Yet its societal ripple effects lingered. Some ardent fans protested the sentences as too harsh, demanding reductions, sparking widespread concern. Psychologists began analyzing why Priya Inuk garnered such fervent public adoration. One expert suggested her allure stemmed from her striking appearance, her bold act of confronting a coworker, and her dramatic life story. When faced with a perplexing event, people craved deeper insights into hidden details, and media coverage of the case tapped into that curiosity. Priya Inuk's sister, tearfully speaking to the media, lamented that her sister was now branded a cold-blooded monster, with even their family and close friends facing attacks and criticism. Only the court's verdict clarified that Priya Inuk hadn't premeditated the crime. She pleaded for the public to avoid one-sided judgments and personal attacks, urging them to give Priya Inuk a chance to reform and rebuild her life. But while the culprits might still have a shot at redemption, for Warisara, brutally killed at just 23, her life was forever cut short. Story 6. Before stunning the world with the hijacking of a plane carrying over 500 passengers, an event that shook aviation history, Yuji Nishizawa was once a brilliant student with a deeply dedicated approach to learning and research. But few knew that his overwhelming ambition to break into the aviation industry inadvertently led him down a path of profound tragedy. Yuji Nishizawa was born on September 8, 1970 in Tokyo. His father worked at the Intellectual Property Office, while his mother was a homemaker. Alongside his parents, Nishizawa lived with his grandmother and older brother, a family of 5 residing in Tokyo's Edagawa ward. With an immense passion for aviation, Nishizawa dreamed of a career in the field, but faced repeated rejections when applying for jobs. One day, he stumbled upon a security flaw at a local airport. A reckless idea took root in his mind to fly a plane under Tokyo's Rainbow Bridge, just like in a flight simulation game. This idea set the stage for a shocking crime on July 23, 1999. As a child, Yuji Nishizawa was a well-behaved and academically gifted student. Yet, he was reserved, not particularly sociable, and his introverted nature left him with few friends. After completing elementary school, Nishizawa enrolled at Musashi High School, a reputable private institution in Tokyo's Narima ward. During this time, Nishizawa developed a fascination with trains and planes. He devoured TV programs and books about these machines, gaining a deep understanding of their mechanics. On weekends, he'd explore various train routes and models, often visiting airport areas to closely observe planes taking off and landing. When he reached university, Yuji Nishizawa was accepted into Hitotsubashi University with outstanding grades. Located in Tokyo's Kokuritsu district, this national university is among Japan's elite. Throughout his university years, Nishizawa's passion for aviation remained unrelenting, as he studied planes day and night. With few friends, he often secluded himself in his dorm, playing air-based simulation games or poring over aviation books. During the summer break of his sophomore year, Yuji Nishizawa, fueled by his aviation obsession, took a job at Haneda Airport as a baggage handler. He used his earnings to buy plane tickets, experiencing various airlines firsthand. In just a short period, he flew over 70 times, meticulously noting his impressions of each flight in a journal. Not stopping there, Nishizawa spent all his free time studying planes, reading books, or playing flight simulators. His ultimate dream was to become a real pilot. After graduating, he repeatedly applied to 3 airlines, dedicating immense effort to prepare for their recruitment tests, firmly believing he'd be accepted. Harsh reality struck when all three airlines rejected Nishizawa, leaving him deeply disappointed and disillusioned. In 1994, at 24, he graduated from Hitotsubashi University and began working at JR Freight Company. The job had little to do with aviation, and given Nishizawa's introverted personality, he found no passion in it. Still, he worked to make a living. After 2 years, Nishizawa quit JR Freight, unable to cope with workplace relationships due to his reclusive nature. For the next few years, he remained unemployed, staying at home. During this time, he immersed himself daily in flight simulation games and aviation books, waiting for an opportunity to break into the industry. One day, while studying an aviation book, Nishizawa came across a layout of Haneda Airport. Having worked there as a baggage handler, he immediately noticed a glaring security vulnerability. From the layout, Nishizawa recalled a route at the airport that allowed staff to bypass security checks and head straight to the boarding gates. If exploited, this path could enable someone to bring prohibited items onto a plane. This startling discovery excited him. He believed that reporting this flaw to the airport or relevant authorities might earn him a foothold in the aviation industry. To test his theory, Yuji Nishizawa bought a plane ticket and followed the route he'd identified. Sure enough, he evaded the security checkpoint and reached the boarding gate. He then drafted a detailed report outlining the issue and proposing solutions to fix the vulnerability. He sent the report to Japan's Ministry of Transport, the Tokyo Aviation Bureau, Haneda Airport, and one of its managing entities, Japan Airport Terminal Ku, Senetsubawa Airport, hoping to gain recognition. Upon receiving the report, Haneda Airport's management held a meeting. Discussions revealed that addressing the flaw would require not only enhanced security, but also annual infrastructure upgrades. Given practical constraints, the security concern Nishizawa raised didn't receive much attention from Haneda's management. He waited at home for a month but received no response. Frustrated by the lack of acknowledgement, Nishizawa visited Haneda Airport to check on the issue and found the security flaws unaddressed. When he called the relevant departments, they told him they were still discussing the matter. Desperate not to miss his chance to enter the aviation industry, he directly asked about job openings, only to be informed that the airport had sufficient staff and no plans to hire. This infuriated Nishizawa. He demanded at least a research fee for the time he'd invested in the report, only to be outright rejected. His dream of breaking into aviation shattered completely. From this rejection, a sinister plan formed in Yuji Nishizawa's mind. If the airport didn't value his discovery, he'd make them face the consequences. In his flight simulation game, he was tackling the toughest level, flying under the Rainbow Bridge. Spanning Tokyo Bay, the bridge's construction began in 1987 and finished in 1993. It stretches 798 meters in total, with a main span of 570 meters and a height of 52 meters from the deck to the ground, divided into 2 levels. Its stunning architecture and scenic surroundings often feature in films and TV shows. In reality, flying a large commercial plane under the Rainbow Bridge is an immense challenge. Yuji Nishizawa didn't just want to achieve this in a game. He wanted to do it for real. Thus, he began meticulously planning a deranged scheme to hijack a plane. Returning to the crime, on a day in July 1999, 29-year-old Yuji Nishizawa prepared a suitcase packed with items essential for his criminal plan. He told his mother he was traveling to Hokkaido, but she noticed his recent odd behavior. So, while he was out shopping, she secretly checked his bag. Inside, she found a zip tie and a sharp knife. Nishizawa had previously contemplated suicide, leading his mother to fear he was in distress again. She hid the knife. When Nishizawa returned and noticed his bag missing, he confronted her. She pleaded with him not to do anything drastic and to share what was troubling him. But by then, Nishizawa had finalized his plan. He assaulted his mother to retrieve the bag and fled the house. Little did Yuji Nishizawa's mother know that, after leaving that day, her son would orchestrate an event that would shock Japan. On Friday, July 23, 1999, Yuji Nishizawa arrived at Haneda Airport with luggage containing tools for his crime. He approached the airline counter using a false identity to purchase 2 plane tickets. The first was for a flight from Haneda to Atami Airport in Osaka, departing at 6:45 a.m. The second was from Haneda to New Chitose Airport in Hokkaido, departing at 10:55 a.m. After receiving boarding passes, passengers at Haneda Airport typically check their luggage and pass through security. Staff rigorously screen each passenger before they can board, ensuring no prohibited items are carried on. Only after clearance can passengers enter the waiting area. Checked luggage is stored separately from the passenger cabin, allowing some items, like knives, to be transported in checked bags, even if banned from carry-ons. At 6:45 a.m. that day, Yuji Nishizawa boarded the flight from Haneda. About an hour later, the plane landed at Atami Airport in Osaka. There, Nishizawa retrieved his checked luggage and purchased a return ticket to Haneda. Following his plan, he checked his luggage again, passed security, and proceeded to the boarding gate. Upon returning to Haneda, Nishizawa studied the layout he'd brought. It showed the airport's 2 levels, the first for arrivals, the second for the departure lounge. A staircase used internally by staff connected directly to the lounge on the 2nd floor. Flight attendants also used this route. As a sophomore, Yuji Nishizawa had worked as a baggage handler at Haneda, so he knew of the staircase. It was the critical security flaw he'd reported, yet the airport had dismissed his concerns. If a knife were hidden in checked luggage, he could retrieve it upon arrival, bypass the crowd, and slip through the internal staircase to the lounge without passing security again. Using this loophole, Yuji Nishizawa collected his luggage and blended into the crowd, heading to a restroom. There, he changed his hairstyle and put on glasses to avoid recognition. Upon exiting, he donned opaque white gloves to prevent sweaty hands and avoid leaving fingerprints. From his bag, Nishizawa retrieved the knife, concealed it on his person, and discarded the bag. In his report, he'd stressed the need for heightened security at the internal staircase, yet the airport had only placed a staff-only sign at the entrance, leaving the path accessible. Exploiting this vulnerability, Yuji Nishizawa reached the 2nd-floor lounge via the staff entrance. Everything went according to plan. He prepared to board All Nippon Airways Flight 61, departing from Haneda to New Chitose Airport in Hokkaido at 10:55 a.m. All Nippon Airways Flight 61 was operated by a Boeing 747-400, a heavy aircraft with a lower cargo hold and an upper passenger cabin. The passenger cabin was split into 2 levels, with more seats on the lower deck. The cockpit was located at the front of the upper deck. The flight carried 503 passengers and 14 crew members. The captain of the flight was now Yuki Nagashima, 51 years old, born into a family with a deep aviation legacy. His older and younger brothers were also captains. Nagashima was a seasoned pilot with over 20,000 hours of flight experience. At 11:21 a.m. that day, flight attendants reminded passengers to fasten their seatbelts. The plane taxied onto the runway and took off safely. 2 minutes later, while still climbing, Yuji Nishizawa suddenly unbuckled his seatbelt, pulled a knife from his jacket, and stood up, heading toward a flight attendant at the rear of the plane. Witnessing this, several passengers screamed in terror. Though equally frightened, the flight attendants had been trained to handle hijackings. One attendant mustered the courage to ask Nishizawa to return to his seat and fasten his seatbelt. Instead, Nishizawa grabbed the attendant by the collar, pressed the knife to her throat, and forced her toward the cockpit. Meanwhile, another attendant urgently contacted the pilots via the plane's intercom, reporting the hijacking threat. Upon receiving the alert, Captain Naoyuki Nagashima initiated the standard hijacking protocol. First, he checked the plane's fuel reserves to determine if there was enough to reach a destination the hijacker might demand. Next, he placed a map in an easily accessible spot, avoiding any actions like reaching for the map in front of the hijacker that might raise suspicion. Nagashima also removed his tie to prevent the hijacker from using it as a weapon. After these swift preparations, he notified air traffic control of the hijacking and handed control of the planes to his 2 co-pilots, Koga and Yuko, before standing up and heading to the rear. Peering through the cockpit door's peephole to assess the situation, Nagashima saw the hijacker holding a knife to the attendant's throat, his eyes blazing with fury. Nishizawa shouted demands to open the cockpit door. Visibly agitated, the door could be opened from the inside, as the captain held a key. Nagashima faced a critical decision. Opening the door would give the hijacker control of the plane, but refusing risked the attendant's life. After a brief deliberation, the captain chose to open the cockpit door. 11 minutes after ANA Flight 61 took off, hijacker Yuji Nishizawa entered the cockpit. He threatened the co-pilots while staring curiously at the cockpit's electronic equipment. Surrounded by so many instruments, Nishizawa, experiencing a real cockpit for the first time, was visibly thrilled. Moments later, he demanded the captain change course to Yokosuka in Kanagawa Prefecture. The flight's original destination was Hokkaido, but at that moment, the plane was over Chiba Prefecture. Nagashima had to make a wide turn to redirect toward Yokosuka. Investigations later revealed the Boeing 747 was flying at 37,000 feet, 11,200 meters. Nishizawa ordered the pilots to descend to just 3,000 feet, 914 meters. At such a low altitude, the plane risked colliding with mountains. A heavy aircraft like the Boeing 747 flying so low was extremely dangerous. But Nishizawa's agitation left Nagashima no room to object. He reluctantly complied, descending to the perilous altitude. Minutes later, Nishizawa demanded they fly to Izuoshima, an island 60 kilometers south of Kanagawa formed by underwater volcanic activity. The hijacking unfolded abruptly. To avoid panic, the crew didn't inform all passengers. Only about 80 on the upper deck were aware of the situation. Over 400 passengers on the lower deck remained oblivious. Soon, some noticed Mount Fuji through the windows, an impossible sight on the planned route to Hokkaido. Coupled with the unusually low altitude, they assumed the plane had encountered an issue requiring a temporary detour. This assumption calmed the passengers. 17 minutes after takeoff, Nishizawa expelled the two co-pilots from the cockpit and locked the door. He then sat in the co-pilot seat, leaving only himself and Captain Nagashima in the cockpit. Smaller aircraft often fly over Izuoshima. To avoid collisions, Nagashima asked Nishizawa if they could ascend slightly, but he refused. The Boeing 747 has dual control yokes that operate in sync. Moving one automatically moves the other. Nishizawa gripped the co-pilot's yoke, eager to feel the thrill of flying, but Nagashima held the main yoke tightly, preventing the hijacker from taking control. Enraged, Nishizawa recklessly jerked the yoke, causing the plane to lurch dangerously. Soon, the plane reached the skies above Izuoshima. Nishizawa then demanded they head to Yokotu Air Base. Unable to predict the hijacker's next move, Nagashima secretly activated the autopilot, setting the plane to maintain a predetermined altitude and course. Meanwhile, on the upper deck, flight attendants moved elderly passengers, women, and children to the lower deck. Only about 40 passengers remained upstairs, including 53-year-old Junji Yamanoi, a pilot himself. Yamanoi and another pilot were traveling to Hokkaido for other flight duties, never expecting to encounter a hijacking. Yamanoi had noticed the hijacker during check-in at the airport, but hadn't anticipated such a dangerous act. He realized that without swift action, a catastrophic accident could kill many. Consulting with the crew and other passengers, he devised a plan. Since the hijacker was alone, armed only with a knife, a coordinated rush into the cockpit could overpower him. Inside the cockpit, Nishizawa grew furious at his inability to take control. He pulled out his knife, threatening Nagashima to hand over the controls. Nagashima knew the plane was flying at a dangerously low altitude. If an inexperienced person took over, it could crash immediately. Yet Nishizawa was unrelenting. His goal in hijacking the plane was to fulfill his lifelong dream of flying it himself. 23 minutes after takeoff, Nishizawa's anger boiled over. He stabbed Nagashima in the chest. The autopilot remained active, so despite Nishizawa's efforts, he couldn't turn the yoke. Though he frequently played flight simulators, a real plane was vastly different. Nishizawa, who had never undergone formal flight training, began to panic. He started pressing buttons chaotically, inadvertently disabling the autopilot. 40 minutes after takeoff, Nishizawa gained full control of the plane. It began shaking violently, alarming passengers. He then embarked on a reckless challenge, flying under the Rainbow Bridge. To do so, he further lowered the altitude, flying dangerously close to the ground. The plane carried about 10,000 liters of fuel. Flying so low risked a crash, endangering not only those on board but also people on the ground. A crash in a populated area would have catastrophic consequences. Ground cameras captured ANA Flight 61 flying at a low altitude. Onlookers below stopped to watch in disbelief. On the upper deck, pilot Yamanoi Junji warned that the plane was descending rapidly. If it continued, it would crash. He rallied the group. The hijacker had only a knife, and a coordinated attack could stop him. Yamanoi vowed to take responsibility for any consequences. He instructed the crew to retrieve the cockpit door key. At that moment, a cockpit alarm blared. The plane was critically close to the ground and would crash without immediate action. Unable to wait, Yamanoi Junji and others broke down the cockpit door and dragged Eugenie Nishizawa out. Several passengers pinned him down as he struggled, shouting that he wanted to fly under the Rainbow Bridge. They used belts and ties to restrain him, securing him to a passenger seat. The plane was now just 200 meters from the ground, on the verge of crashing. Through the windows, passengers could see houses below. A crash here would be devastating. In the cockpit, Yamanoi Junji immediately took control, pulling the plane upward, but the aircraft lost speed, requiring an engine thrust boost. With both hands on the yoke, Yamanoi couldn't spare one to adjust the throttle. At the last second, the throttle automatically engaged. Before losing consciousness, Captain Nagashima had activated the autopilot. When the system detected the speed loss, it automatically increased thrust, averting disaster. Yamanoi Junji handed control back to co-pilots Koga and Yuko. He then made a brief announcement over the intercom, explaining that the plane had been hijacked, but the perpetrator was now subdued, and they were returning to Haneda Airport. As Yamanoi finished, passengers erupted in applause, a truly unprecedented experience. Among them was a doctor who rushed to the cockpit to aid the captain. But sadly, Nagashima could not be saved. 51 minutes after takeoff, Flight 61 landed safely at Haneda Airport. In that time, over 500 people on board had faced a harrowing battle between life and death. Thanks to Yamanoi Junji's quick thinking and the collective effort of the passengers, everyone else survived. Upon landing, Yuji Nishizawa was arrested by police waiting at the airport. Though safe, passengers were still shaken, recounting the ordeal to reporters. One passenger documented the entire incident on paper, providing valuable evidence for the investigation. The hijacking drew intense public and media attention. The legal proceedings stretched nearly 6 years. In April 2005, the Tokyo court delivered its verdict. Yuji Nishizawa was convicted of murder, hijacking, and related charges. However, a defense-led evaluation revealed he had Asperger's syndrome. Due to signs of impaired behavioral control, he was sentenced to life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. The incident prompted serious reflection within Japan's aviation authorities. At Haneda Airport, the security flaw was thoroughly addressed. Management increased security personnel at staff and passenger exits, installed advanced equipment to prevent passengers from re-entering after retrieving luggage, and enhanced surveillance to prevent similar incidents. Captain Naoyuki Nagashima had faced the hijacker with calm resolve, refusing to easily relinquish control of the plane. He did everything to ensure the safety of passengers and crew, ultimately sacrificing his life. Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi and Transport Minister Toshihiro Nikai awarded Naoyuki Nagashima a Medal of Honor, recognizing his courageous sacrifice. And the night deepens. Thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.